All right, buckle up for a deep dive
Oh, this is going to be a good one.
into a case that's going to send chills down your spine. John Eric Armstrong, convicted of killing 5 women,
5 that we know of.
but suspected of countless more. We've got his Wikipedia page, some books, and even some TV episodes that have covered him.
Yeah, this guy's been all over.
It's going to get intense.
What gets me is the potential global scale of his crimes. I mean, we're talking murders across the U.S.
Oh, wow.
And maybe even into Asia. Like, it's a massive puzzle.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to put the pieces together.
I love a good puzzle.
Me too.
Okay, so Armstrong's story starts in North Carolina, born in 1973.
Seems like a pretty normal beginning, right?
Not quite.
Okay.
The sources paint a very different picture. He claimed he suffered severe abuse from his father, including physical and sexual abuse.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, and there were also accounts of domestic violence against his mother. And tragically, he lost his younger brother at a very young age.
Wow. I mean, we've all heard that saying, hurt people, hurt people.
But it's still jarring to see it potentially play out in such a horrific way.
It really makes you think. But, you know, it's important to note that while these details offer some insight, they don't excuse his actions at all.
Of course not.
Human behavior is complex.
So complex.
And understanding his past is just one piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. Okay, so this troubled childhood leads him to join the Navy in 1992.
Structure and discipline.
Right. Yeah, you'd think the military might provide some stability. But sources describe him as,
moody.
Yeah, even then.
And get this, some sources even suggest he might have committed his first murder before enlisting.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Are you saying he was potentially already on this dark path before the Navy?
That's right. It's unconfirmed, but there's speculation that his murderous spree could have begun as early as 1991.
It's like there was this
So young.
simmering darkness within him, just waiting for the right moment
Oh, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
to erupt.
And when you consider the potential global scale, spanning continents, it's like a global predator.
Chilling.
Totally.
Okay, so fast forward to 1999.
Okay.
Armstrong leaves the Navy and then enrolls in college in Michigan.
What?
Yeah. Talk about a jarring contrast.
That is.
Here's a guy potentially carrying the weight of these horrific acts, yet attempting to blend into a normal life.
That's classic. It's a part of what makes serial killers so terrifying. They blend in.
Right.
They mask their true nature.
Makes you wonder how many people we encounter every day
Oh, I know, right?
might be harboring similar dark secrets.
It's a chilling thought. It underscores the importance of just, like, awareness.
Yeah.
And trusting your instinct.
100%.
But for Armstrong, the facade couldn't last forever.
No. Let's talk about his alleged crimes. The sources say his victims were primarily sex workers, and he had a chillingly consistent MO strangulation and then posing the bodies.
And it gets even more disturbing. He confessed to posing the bodies so that he could return and have sex with them. This necrophilia just adds a whole other layer of depravity to his crimes.
It's like he was trying to exert power,
Oh, absolutely.
even after death.
Total control. Lack of empathy.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
Total disconnect from basic human compassion.
Grim reminder of the depths of darkness out there.
Sure.
But thankfully, his reign of terror couldn't last forever.
Yep.
In 2000, a failed murder attempt led to his capture.
Oh, this is a crazy story. So he tried to strangle a woman, Wilhelmina Drain,
Okay.
but she fought back, like sprayed him with mace and escaped.
Oh.
And a few days later, he targeted a man named Devin Marcus.
A man.
Yeah. Marcus also escaped and like immediately reported it to the police.
Wow. They were incredibly lucky to get away.
Right. Their bravery probably saved countless lives.
Absolutely. So they report these attacks, and then just days later,
Yeah.
police discover the bodies of 3 women.
In a Detroit railroad yard.
Oh, my God.
It was Robin Brown, Rosemary Felt, and Kelly Jean Hood.
All strangled.
All strangled and left in, well,
Suggestive position.
yeah, let's just say that.
So he was still committing these horrific acts, even while on the run.
Exactly. And this discovery, coupled with the witness accounts, put immense pressure on law enforcement.
To find this guy.
Yeah.
And luckily, science stepped in to play a pivotal role.
You're talking about the DNA
The
evidence?
smoking gun.
Right.
It had to be.
It was. DNA found on the body of another victim, Wendy Jordan, matched Armstrong's.
And that was it.
That was it. He was convicted of Wendy Jordan's murder in 2001, sentenced to life in prison.
Justice served. At least for Wendy.
Yeah.
But what about the other victims?
He was later convicted for the murders of Kelly Jean Hood, Robin Brown, Rosemary Felt, and Monica Johnson.
So All the women found in the railroad yard.
Exactly. So that's 5 confirmed victims.
5.
But it might only be the tip of the iceberg.
Wait, you're saying there could be more victims out there?
Well, during his confessions, Armstrong claimed to have killed women in various locations across the U.S.
Oh.
And even in Asia, including places like Hong Kong and Thailand. But a lot of these claims are still unverified.
So 5 confirmed victims.
Yeah.
But potentially dozens more.
It's possible. It's no wonder this case has been featured in so many true crime shows.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Shows like History's Mysteries, Infamous Murders, Very Bad Men, Twisted Killers,
A lot of big ones.
and World's Most Evil Killers have all covered him.
It's a story that just keeps fascinating and horrifying people.
Yeah, because on the surface it's shocking.
Right?
How he managed to evade capture for so long.
Totally.
But there's a lot more to unpack here.
Oh, there is. For those who want a deeper dive, there are 2 books specifically about John Eric Armstrong. The Baby Doll Serial Killer, The John Eric Armstrong Homicides, and Missing from Michigan Ave, The Case of John Eric Armstrong Homicides. Both are by B.R. Bates with Gerald Cliff, Ph.D. The second one's actually an earlier edition of The Baby Doll Serial Killer, released in the academic community.
So for our listeners who really want to get into the weeds, those books sound like the way to go.
Absolutely. They're packed with info and analysis.
Awesome. We've covered a lot of ground already. But this is really just the beginning.
Just getting started.
Yeah. We need a moment to process all this. And then when we come back, we'll explore Armstrong's psychological profile,
Oh, that'll be good.
the impact of his crimes, and the lingering questions that remain.
Okay, so we've laid out all the chilling facts of John Eric Armstrong's crimes, but what can we glean about his psychological profile from what we have? Like, it can't just be troubled childhood. That's not enough.
Right, like not every kid who has a rough upbringing becomes a serial killer. So what makes this case different?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
The sources mention the abuse he went through, the domestic violence, losing his brother at such a young age. How do we connect those dots without oversimplifying things?
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, correlation doesn't equal causation, right?
Yeah.
There are tons of people who have endured similar hardships but haven't become violent.
This is where things get interesting. So if we look deeper into the abuse, specifically the sexual abuse, it actually lines up with some patterns found in research on serial killers.
Okay, what kind of patterns?
Well, there's a link between childhood sexual abuse and later, like a fascination with control and domination. It can manifest in pretty violent and sexualized ways.
So a messed up way to try and reclaim power that was taken from them.
Yeah, it's like a twisted coping mechanism.
So in Armstrong's case, his crimes could be seen as him trying to gain back that control.
It's definitely a disturbing possibility. And it's kind of backed up by his MO, you know? Strangulation, that's super personal. It shows a desire for power over the victim.
And the posing of the bodies. Remember, the sources said he admitted to going back and having sex with them. It's like he had to have that final control.
Exactly, that necrophilia, it goes beyond just killing. It's about exerting power after death. Shows a complete lack of empathy, like dehumanizing his victims.
That's just dark. But I gotta say, we're working with limited information.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We can guess based on what we have, but without a full psychological evaluation, it's tough to definitively say what drove him to these acts.
It's complex, like a puzzle where we're missing some pieces. And even his childhood trauma, while it might give some context, it's not a complete explanation.
So if it's not just the trauma, what else could it be? Sources talk about him being moody in the Navy. Was that a red flag?
It could be, like maybe it points to some underlying instability, trouble with emotions, or forming healthy relationships. And we can't rule out the impact of his military service.
What do you mean? You think the Navy could have turned him into a killer?
Not directly, of course not. But the training, especially in combat roles, can desensitize people to violence. Teaches them to compartmentalize, detach. For someone already prone to darkness, it could have unintended consequences.
So it's like a bunch of things coming together at once. The trauma, maybe some mental health stuff, exposure to violence in the Navy, this perfect storm that created a monster.
Chilling but true. This case is full of layers, and we haven't even talked about society's influence.
What do you mean?
Think about the time period. Late 90s, early 2000s, the internet's blowing up, more access to porn, a lot of violence and entertainment.
And you're saying that could have influenced his behavior?
It's worth thinking about. I mean, we know exposure to violent media can desensitize people, and easy access to porn can warp how people see healthy sexuality. Could that have played a part in his fantasies? pushing him over the edge.
That's a scary thought. I mean, we see these images and messages all the time.
Right.
It's impossible to know the exact impact on each person. But for someone like Armstrong, already vulnerable, it's possible.
It was a recipe for disaster. And, it really makes you think about the media we consume and how it might affect us, especially people who are more susceptible to those influences.
Yeah, this is heavy stuff. But we can't forget the ripple effect of his crimes. The victims and their families, the grief, the trauma, it's heartbreaking.
Totally. It's easy to get caught up in the perpetrator, but the human cost is immense. These were real people with lives, families, friends, and their loss is a hole that can never be filled.
And the ripple effect goes beyond just the victims themselves.
Right.
Whole communities are impacted. There's a sense of fear that can linger for years.
Yeah, and it highlights how vital it is to support victims and their families, not just right after, but long term. Counseling, resources, a justice system that actually prioritizes their needs.
And we have to acknowledge the two people who escaped him, Wilhelmina Drain and Devin Marcus. They're the reason he was caught.
Their bravery is incredible. Think about the strength it took to fight back, to survive, to make sure no one else got hurt. They saved lives.
Their stories show how resilient the human spirit is
Absolutely.
and how powerful it is to fight back.
Absolutely. We've covered motivations, the societal context, the impact. But one thing still bugs me. Could there be more victims?
That's the question, isn't it? He claimed he killed all over the place. And remember, his victims were mainly sex workers, a group that is often overlooked and marginalized.
Yeah, that makes it super hard to track down and investigate cases.
So even though he's locked up, we might never know the full extent of his crimes.
That's the scary part. There could be families out there still looking for answers, not knowing their loved one might be connected to this.
That's a thought that keeps me up at night. Even with convictions, the shadow of these crimes can last for years.
It's a long shadow, and it highlights why we have to be vigilant and support vulnerable communities.
We can't let our guard down. So where do we go from here? What can we learn from all this?
Well, practically speaking, it reinforces the importance of personal safety, especially for women. Being aware of your surroundings, trusting your gut, and taking steps to protect yourself.
I think for me, it shows just how complex people can be. Like how someone can seem so normal but have such darkness inside. A reminder that evil can hide in plain sight.
Yeah. And we can't forget about addressing trauma and mental health. While it's not an excuse for violence, understanding the roots of it can help us prevent it in the future.
We've focused on the dark side of this case, but let's not forget about the bravery of those who escaped. That strength is inspiring.
Totally. It reminds you that even in the face of pure horror, there's always hope.
And for our listeners who want to learn more, there are those books we talked about earlier. They really delve into the specifics of this case.
They're a great resource for understanding the mind of a serial killer and how these investigations work.
This deep dive has been tough, but I think it was important to do. We looked at the darkness of Armstrong's crimes, his psychology, the impact, and the courage of those who fought back.
It's a reminder of what humans are capable of, but also a reminder of the strength of the human spirit and the importance of seeking justice.
I don't know about you, but I can't shake this feeling that we're not done with this story yet. I mean, Armstrong's locked up, but all those unverified claims about murders across the globe, ugh, it's heavy.
Like a shadow hanging over everything, right? You mentioned Seattle, Hawaii, Hong Kong. What if we really are just seeing the tip of the iceberg? Families out there still searching for answers, not knowing their loved one could be connected to this man.
Ugh, it's so chilling. All these unresolved cases, potentially linked to him, just waiting to be discovered.
It's tough, investigating crimes that cross borders and cultures, and the fact that so many of his alleged victims were sex workers, it makes it even more complicated.
Yeah, they're often stigmatized, marginalized, their stories aren't always heard, their cases not always investigated thoroughly.
Exactly.
It breaks my heart to think about it. It really underscores the importance of awareness. We have to advocate for those who are often overlooked.
100%. We can't just rely on law enforcement alone. We need to speak up, challenge biases, create a culture where every victim matters, no matter what.
Absolutely. Everyone deserves justice. And speaking of justice, we have to remember the people who came forward, like Wilhelmina Drain and Devin Marcus. They put their lives on the line to escape and report those attacks. If it weren't for them, Armstrong might still be out there.
Their courage is incredible. Think about it. They fought back against someone like Armstrong, they survived, and they made sure he couldn't hurt anyone else.
True heroes. They remind us that even when we're terrified, we can still act, we can resist, we can fight for ourselves and for others.
They show that even a small act of defiance can make a difference. It can lead to justice, it can save lives.
This deep dive has been heavy, no doubt. But I think we needed to go there. We explore the darkness of his crimes, his psychology, the impact on his victims, the bravery of those who fought back.
It's a lot to process, but it's important. We have to remember what humans are capable of, the good and the bad. And we have to keep fighting for justice.
And if you're listening and want to learn more about this case, we really recommend checking out the books we mentioned. They go into so much detail about Armstrong's life, the investigation, the aftermath.
They really offer a unique perspective on this whole story, a glimpse into the mind of a serial killer and the long road to justice.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away?
Awareness, for sure. Being aware of your surroundings, aware of the people around you, aware of the signs of danger. It sounds simple, but it can make a world of difference. We can all play a part in preventing these kinds of tragedies.
Well said. Knowledge is power. And by sharing these stories, raising awareness, keeping the conversation going, we can work toward a safer world for everyone. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.